Hello, everybody. Hopefully we are, in fact, live now.
Oh,
Who knows?
Come on.
Technology. Yeah, there you go.
Yay.
It's working. Yay! Hello, everybody.
We're only a few minutes late.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Life is always interesting.
The days are just packed. Today has been just packed. Oh,
All
my
right.
goodness.
Well, let's get going.
Let's get going. Thank you for joining us. And we think we might be at the final.
We have Wendy
Oh, hi.
and Susan and Carol and Shauna.
There you go. Well,
Or Shayna. I'm never sure how to say it.
Shayna, I don't know.
There's no
I don't
W,
know.
so it might be Shayna.
Could be. But how do you get Sade out of Sade, is it? S-A-D-E is how you pronounce it. You know the singer?
The sweetest taboo.
There you go, that one.
Anyway.
How do you get Sade out of that? I
Yes,
don't know.
we are both feeling so much better. Thank you.
We are.
And life is good.
I've had an amazingly good day, and it continues to be really
I
good.
think we're going to get through it tonight.
I think so. Oh gosh, and didn't it get interesting?
All right, here we are.
Do you want to go first then?
Sure.
Perfect. Off we go then.
Shayna. Okay.
Shayna.
There you go.
I'm so sorry.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
31. There were two things that I saw clearly as a result of that night's work. Firstly, that the priest of the moon meant to come to us as he had come to Morgan Le Fay, when she was Miss Morgan, the first companion.
Interesting.
And secondly, that he meant to use Molly as they used the moon priestess in Atlantis. And I wondered how Molly, who had been brought up by Mrs. Muckley, would take to this, and hope to God that she had her fair share of original sin before education got in its
She had her fair share of original sin. I love it.
Our conventions have so stereotyped the polarity between a man and a woman that it has got stuck and no one knows how to shift it. But what we want in the part of marriage that is behind the veil is the dynamic woman who comes in the name of the great goddess, conscious of her priesthood and proud of her power, and it is this self-confidence that the modest woman lacks.
Get your goddess
He
on.
don't know us witches.
She gets a goddess on, believe me.
There are virtually important things. These are vitally important things, and we have forgotten them. And I think it was to bring them again that Morgan Le Fay and the priest of the moon were working. But it was not enough that Morgan Le Fay should do them, for she was not, I think, of our evolution or epoch. But one sent to us from another place. It was indeed that those of our own age and race should do them, and someone had to break the trail for those that came after. Someone had to find in marriage neither an animal function nor a remedy for sin, but a divinely instituted sacrament for the bringing down of power. And in this sacrament the woman must tell her ancient place as priestess, take her ancient place as priestess of the rites, calling down lightning from the heaven, from the initiator, not from the initiated. And to this end, I, being a man, had to learn to receive, which is not easy for a man, for he will not admit his need, wishing to be self-sufficient unto himself and always the giver. But God knows he isn't. If there is one thing on God's earth he isn't, it is self-sacrificing.
Self-sufficing.
Self-sufficing?
Self-sufficing.
All right. We had to reverse the conventional polarity in our inner relationship, had Molly and I, before our marriage, would light up for us. She had to become the priestess of the goddess, and I, the kneeling worshipper, had to receive the sacrament at her hands. This a man can readily do when he has reverence for a woman as well as being passionately in love with her. But I thought he didn't love Molly.
Oh, I think he does now.
For then to him, marriage with her automatically becomes a sacrament.
For there can be no greatness of any kind that is purely personal and an end in itself. When the body of a woman is made an altar for the worship of the goddess, who is all beauty and magnetic life, And the man pours himself out in worship and sacrifice, keeping back no part of the price of giving his very self for love. Seeing in his mate the priestess serving with him in the worship, then the goddess enters the temple, roses in her hands and her doves flying around her, called down by the faith of her worshippers. It is because we have no faith that we do not see the goddess behind all womanhood and thereby invoke her. And it is because they do not realize the sanctity of great Isis that women have no respect for the gifts they bring us. For if marriage is a sacrament, as the Church avows, it is so by virtue of being the outward and visible sign of an inward and spiritual grace. But that grace is not the grace of the crucified, but of great Isis, giver of life on earth. We blaspheme when we call it a remedy for sin. It is a rite of evocation, and the power evoked is life. It is the rite of the adoration of the beauty, which together with wisdom and strength form the three holy pillars that support high heaven. For there is a mysticism of nature and her elemental powers, as well as a mysticism of the spirit. And these are not two things, but two aspects of one thing. For God is made manifest in nature, and nature is the self-expression of God. And when we deny the natural, we deny the gift of God, which is to our use and his glory. How can we better worship God than in the sanctity of the act of creation that hands on his gift of life? And shall it be more holy as an animal function and remedy for sin than as the evocation of all beauty in the soul of man and the expression of his love? These are not things that it is particularly safe to say, but they are things that need saying. Day by day, as the moon power got in its work on her, I watched Molly change from a little, quiet, staunch, faithful thing, very sweet but entirely itless, into a pocket edition of Morgan, with the same vitality and magnetism, and the same lithe grace and bell-like tone of voice, for these, it seems, are the things the moon power brings to women. And I saw too the change of the moon tides in Molly, ebbing and flowing like the tides of the sea, never twice alike, and learnt why it is her right to summon to the worship as priestess in charge of the shrine. For she alone knows the set of the tides of the moon, and for a man's tides are the tides of the sun, changing only with the season, and under civilized conditions changing so slightly as to be negligible. In those days there were not two at the farm, but three, for Molly and I constantly felt the coming and going of one of who came to us from another sphere. And in the dusk, when the moonlight fell upon the wood smoke, we saw, or thought we saw, the shadowy figure formulate. We built it out of our imagination in the shadows as one sees faces in the fire, as Morgan had taught. And to our eyes it took on life and spoke, for we were not imagining a fantasy, but the shadows of the real, and the real came down and ensouled it. Thus, I think, have the gods always manifested to their worshippers.
And night by night, called down by faith and fantasy, the priest of the moon came to us that he had come to Morgan Le Fay when she was an aging and
penurious woman. She has some words.
She does. Bearing the bread and wine that turned to strange life and vitality. For this was the work he had set out to do, and these were the secrets he had brought from the lost Atlantis in those forgotten ages, when he came to the islands of the sea and the sea king's ships. The secret of generation and regeneration by the wine of life, which is the moon wine, the soma. He told us of ancient Atlantis and its lost and forgotten arts, and the knowledge that perverted to evil was destroyed by cataclysm that the earth might be cleansed. he told us how, foreknowing the coming of disaster, he had traveled to the islands of the sea, bringing with him his books, and that his was the origin of the Grail legend. For as was the custom, a Christian dress had been given to the old tradition.
Of course.
But the hearts of men becoming evil once more, the knowledge was withdrawn, lest the tragedy of Atlantis repeat itself. But now it might be that the knowledge should come again, if a way could be found, and he had found it in part through Morgan, and he had made a start with his work, and carried it as far as he might. But Morgan, as I had always known, was a strange being, both man and woman at heart, as the higher adepts are, and for that reason she could not surrender herself to the mating, and although he fetched the Grail from Mount Salvet, and bore it to the shore, she might not walk the ways of men, but remain the sea priestess forever, coming to the water's edge at the uttermost ebb of the meet, holding out her Grail and waiting, till at last her call was heard, and one came down, and she placed the Grail in his hands, and went back to the sea again. I remembered how Morgan had always veiled her face like the great goddess whom she worshipped, whenever she had occasion to visit the mainland, and only revealed her features out of the sea grit down.
Out on the sea
grit down, the best part of the mile from the coast. Night by night, as the wood smoke rose from the fire of Azrael, we built up the form of the priest of the moon in the drifting shadows, till he was real to us as we were to each other. And though we knew his form was
such stuff as dreams are made of.
That's weird. And though we knew his form such stuff as dreams are made of, there came through that form the touch of mind on mind, and that was the thing that counted, and no one who felt it could think that it was hallucinating.
Now it was the touch of mind of the priest of the moon on ours that made everything possible. Without him, we should never have succeeded in bringing anything within reach. He gave us the start that enabled us to get going, and for that I shall be eternally grateful. And to that I shall never cease to bear witness, in spite of scepticism and discredit. Madame Blavatsky talked of her masters, and her words have the ring of sincerity, though the flopping of letters onto folks' noses has not, and was done. I think to impress the polloi, who were exceedingly hoy in her days.
The hoi polloi.
Well, indeed. We had no phenomena, had Molly and I, but we had the sense of the touch of mind on mind and the presence of power. After all, if telepathy is a fact and survival is a fact, there seems no reason why the survivors should not telepath, even if the letter flopping is open to question.
I don't understand what
letter. We'll have to go look that one up. What flopping of letters?
Madame
Blavatsky flopped
flopping.
letters on your nose, apparently, even if the letter flopping is open to question. As for me, I would sooner have had the sense of the touch of mind on mind, with its tremendously stimulating influence, than any amount of objective evidence. But the priest of the moon could no more cross the gulf to come to us than we had been able to cross the gulf to go to him. Some device had to be found whereby we could meet halfway in the abyss of air, and that device was the art of the magical images, whereby we visualized the form before the inner eye in the kingdoms, and he projected therein the life by the power of the mind. And so we felt the touch of mind on mind where no man was, and heard the words where no one spoke, for the thing came across the gulf on the wings of fantasy, for fantasy is the ass that carries the ark, as they said in the ancient mysteries. Now, it is a very odd thing that I, who could visualize the priest of the moon at will, till he seemed to stand out like an image in a stereoscope, always felt him to be a shadow thrown by some other reality, whereas Molly, who couldn't visualize him at all, was perfectly sure of his presence and actuality, and seemed to commune with him interiorly, if that's a word,
Tough
with as
words.
much certainty as if he were on the telephone.
Aha.
He taught me, and I learnt all manner of things from him about Atlantis and the ancient ways in Britain. But he did not so much teach Molly as change her. I watched her changing before my eyes until finally the priest of the moon seemed to belong to her rather than to me, who had introduced her to him. Then one day Molly told me a strange thing. She said that there was something else as well as the priest of the moon, that just as we had made the priest of the moon real to ourselves by thinking about him, so he was making a goddess real to her by visualizing her. And the goddess was great Isis, in whom all womanhood is gathered up. Then I sat back and left Molly alone and watched her, for it was her turn now.
And just as she had confidence in the priest of the moon, though she did not understand the psychology of him, so she had confidence in the great Isis, though she did not understand the metaphysics of her. And it was this confidence that made her real and brought her through, as my enlightened mysticism never could have done.
Can I just interject a sec? She writes in such long run-on sentences, it's really hard to get your tongue round them.
With ridiculous words.
Yes.
For Molly, in her own eyes, at any rate, was becoming something, and the result of it was that she was becoming something in mine also, finally. She liked to think of herself as a priestess of great Isis, and presently I found that I was thinking of her as a priestess of the great Isis too, for her feelings affected me more than I realized, and I began to understand that what Morgan had said about my belief in her as a priestess, making her a priestess. But hang it all, it wasn't just belief, for Molly was functioning as a priestess and bringing through the power. As the days went on, she became more and more sure of herself as she saw my reactions and began to feel that she as a priestess had the right to invoke the goddess, and finally she dared to do it. There was a sea fog that night that wrapped all around the narrow neck of the land where stood the farm between the salt marsh and the tide water. Save for the shadowy bulk of the Bell Knoll, the land had disappeared and the high sea down had vanished like the lost Atlantis. All that remained was the hollow echo, verbating and reprobating, as the melancholy two-tone call of the star-bearer light struck down the hollow rock.
Starbearer lightship. You don't have lightships, do you? You don't know what they are. Instead of putting a lighthouse, which is built something, they actually have a ship with a light on it, and so a lightship is a ship
It's going to bob
actually
up and
has,
down.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Thus, yeah.
We were cut off from the land, and only the sea remained open to us as an occasional shift of the drift of the wind opened the long sea lanes in the fog down which the moon shone, for she was low and near setting. That's like 100 words in that sentence.
Oh my God, what a run-on sentence.
It was strange to see the sea lane open thus, with the water all silver in the moonlight, and the fog standing up the walls on either hand, like the cliffs of the phantom fjord. It was such a sea path as this down which the oldest gods might have traveled, coming from the moon, and that which is behind the moon, most ancient time and space, when the earth and the moon were both etheric, not yet solidified into dense matter, and not yet partnered one to another. The tide was coming in, and I had begun to notice that with the rising tide Molly always seemed to wake up, unlike Morgan, who came to her power when the tide was uttermost ebb. But then she was a sea priestess, and Molly was a priestess of the corn and the hearth and the garth.
I don't know what a garth is. I really don't know.
Which is another aspect of the great goddess, whom they both served after their different ways. With the rising tide tonight, Molly grew restless and was constantly looking out of the window into the fog, and opening the window and letting the fog into the room till I protested, for I was wheezy. Then she went out onto the porch and shut the door behind her so that the fog should not inconvenience me.
She was gone so long that I got uneasy and went after her. She was not on the porch, nor in the narrow front garden marked off by its low loose wall from the wide marsh, and I had a sudden panic lest she had answered the call of the sea gods, as had Morgan, and I dashed out of the gate and down through the fog to the beach, calling her frantically. Then I heard her answering call in the fog, and a tremendous sense of relief taught me that it was very good for me to know. I found her down there in the grey half-light where the waves were breaking, and she put her little warm hand in mine, and I was most frightfully glad to feel it there. And I put my arm around her and wanted to march her back to the house to make sure of her, for I was taking no more chances with the sea gods. Morgan had never in any sense been mine, and I had no right to protest when they called her, but had to bear it as best as I could. But Molly was mine, and no mistake about it, and I was standing no nonsense from sea gods or anybody. I was prepared to fight for Molly and defy high heaven if necessary, which was a very great surprise to me, just as great a surprise as it was when I realised the hold the bonbon boxer had got over me. I do not pretend to understand these things. They are very odd. But Molly wasn't having any. She kept tight hold of me and made me stop there where the water was breaking, asthma or no asthma, for she had got something afoot that was bigger than my temporary well-being, and like Morgan, she could harden her heart. I saw that upon the line of dry seaweed that marked high water she had built a little fire of Azrael, pyramidal according tradition, and was awaiting the approach of the water to light it. I saw too that she was dressed in shadowy drapery, and that Morgan's sapphires gleamed on breast and wrist. Molly was doing the thing properly. And because it was real to her, it became real to me and infected me with its emotion. I forgot my asthma and became absorbed in what was afoot, watching the slow creep of the oncoming waves up the sand, and the line of foam at their lip coming further and further up the beach as the tide rose, pushing the languid fog-bound rollers in front of it, for they seemed too flattened and stifled by the thickness of the air to move on their own volition. Presently, the first shallow, spreading wash of a breaking wave ran up to the edge of the weed, and Molly put a match to her fire of Azrael, and we watched it take flame, the dry and resinous woods rapidly turning into a pyramid of fire after their year-long storage out at the fort. The seaweed burned too, with an odd iodine smell that seemed to have the ancient essence of all sea beaches embalmed in it, and I thought of the far-travelled mariners with their gold earrings and curled beards, who had drawn their high-browed sea ships up on Ishtar's bier.
Then the cold drifting drought that is
Draft.
in
It's English, I'm sorry.
Oh gosh.
That's the word draft. We spell it like that.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Then the cold drifting draft that is in every fog opened a sea lane that led right out to the moon, as we saw the slow heave of the sea running all black and shadowy as the tide made up the channel. But even as we watched, the sea felt the call of the moon, and the water became flickering silver as the turn of the tide broke the rhythm of the waves, and we watched the water that had come up, far up the land, turn again to the great deep. The waves had respected Molly's fire and just lipped at it and made it hiss before they turned again, sinking slowly back, leaving a belt of wet sand in the fresh weed to mark their path. Molly raised her arms in the sign of the horns of the moon and invoked the great goddess, as I had seen Morgan do. The moon was low in the west towards her setting, and Molly's feet was the red-lit fire of Azrael, and beyond it the silver pathway stretched out over the sea towards the lost Atlantis. And it seemed to me that her call came
It seemed to me that at her
call came the gods of the past and their priests and worshippers, for she was walking the old worship once again. I could see them come in a long procession over the sea, an army with banners, called by her from the great Atlantic deep, where their land was sunk. I saw them come as they had come of old, winding up the processional, their way to the temple on the crest of the sacred mountain, for a priestess of true lineage called them to the worship. They passed around us, divided on either hand, and went on over the marsh where the bell knoll raised its mist-crowned head in the night of the stars. The bell knoll received them. They passed within to the great chamber of the caves where the worship was held, and Molly and I, left alone with the moon and the sea to do greater worship that is held out there in the silence and darkness close to nature. The moon sank lower. The sea cut her disk, as the mist of the sea banked about her in a golden nimbus. Then something seemed to formulate in the darkness and come over the sea towards us, as though the mist moving by the pathway of silver light upon the water, and it was vast, so that its head met the stars, and it was all veiled and swathed and shrouded. Only we saw the silver feet upon the sea, and they were like moonlight over the water.
And so she came, she of the sea, to the place where the sea meets the land, and we awaited her coming. She paused at the edge of the line of the breaking foam, her feet in the water and her head among the stars, star-crowned. There was no face to see, for she is forever veiled, and there came to us the great exalted awe, which some say is the gods, and none other. This ringling fear took me by the heart and by the throat and by the eyes, gripping like a hand, and my hands began to burn and tingle with a pulsating force, and from behind my eyes it seemed to come out like a beam. And I broke out in that heavy sweat of the heat of the gods, which Morgan had told me always heralds their passing, and my breath was taken short, but not with asthma, and I grew rigid and shook like a man in fever fit. I looked towards Molly and saw that she stood on tiptoe, reaching up towards her goddess as if floating between earth and air like a frozen figure of dance, immobile, tense and effortless. Then slowly great Isis turned and drew her veil closer about her, and she went down the long sea lane out towards the west, the fog closing in behind her. The sea drew back with the falling tide and bared the place of her passing, and on the sand we saw silvery pools that might have been the marks of eddies, but that we knew were her footprints. And so she passed away as silently as she had come, but the place where she passed was holy, being filled with power. Something had touched our souls to awe, and we chose to call it the passing of the goddess. Then we knew that what we called Great Isis had deigned to answer the invocation of her priestess, and that the altar fire was lit in the sanctuary that Molly had swept and garnished and tended with such fidelity. The empty shrine of the loveless home to which I had brought her in my sorrow and loneliness and sickness, and to which she had come for the sake of the greater love that seeks not its own, but is fulfilled in the good of the beloved. We had, perhaps, in these things the making of magical power, for in magic, as Morgan said, there is no power save there be sacrifice. Just as the sea gods had tried for me and got the poor moon calf before they would accept the fort as their temple, so great Isis had demanded of Molly that she should lay herself on the altar of sacrifice, and then, like the fierce tribal fetish that Abraham propitiated with the offer of Isaac, he kept the life but returned to the form of flesh. So Isis had taken Molly, and Molly had let her.
A horrible pang of fear shot through me, lest once again I should be called upon to sacrifice to the sea something that was becoming very dear to me. And I told the sea flat out that if it took Molly, I should have come after her. And it seemed to me that somewhere among the stars I heard faint laughter, silver laughter, and I knew that the goddess was glad, and this was the sound of her joy, for I had offered the acceptable sacrifice without which no mating can be consecrated to the great goddess. For in every union the woman makes this offer, and she goes down to the gates of death to open them to the incoming life, and shall not the man, in common justice, match her giving. For without the shedding of blood there is no redemption, whether in childhood or upon the field of battle, both crucifixions after their kind, and both redeeming power when made sacramental by an ideal. Then we turned to go home. There you go. And the earth under our feet glowed and felt warm like the flesh of a living thing, as it surely is. For it is not the body.
Is it not the body of a goddess?
The earth itself, yes. The mist rolled back with the turning tide, for a breeze sprang up off the land and swept it out to sea. And the breeze freshened and veered. As we walked up the steep sea beach, we heard the crisp crash of waves on shingle.
Oh, and now she throws in a tongue twister.
Yeah. The stars came out in the indigo night of the sky, for great ices had set, sinking below the waves of her way to Atlantis, where maybe she took counsel with her priests, sitting in a circle in the deep sea palaces, and told them concerning the coming to the earth of her again, and her ancient wisdom, by way of a man and a woman who, in spite of many difficulties, had come to love each other. The sea behind us sang like a choir, the waves of either bay beating against the narrow neck of the land where our home stood, like the two pillars of a choir, calling and answering across the cathedral. The pyramidal height of the Bell Knoll rose dark again against the stars, and a sentinel guarding the marshes, and the long bulk of Bellhead stretched out to sea.
Try reading this book alive, people. That's all I'm going to say. You try it.
The lights of the ships going up to Bristol City moved slowly between sea and sky, and in the clearness following the fog, a low glow hung on the horizon from the seaport towns of Wales.
Oh, Welsh Wales. Okay.
And there came to me the great tragedy of all these moving lights of toiling men, and the glow of the crowded towns set in the narrow strip of land between the iron coast and the iron hills with their valleys of harsh toil, where Aphrodite Pandemos walks the sordid streets, and the little Bethels preach, half a god to half a man.
Oh my goodness gracious me. All right, chapter 32.
Last chapter.
I think we might get it in there. That was not a short chapter.
I don't know if I want to read
Let me
the
tell
next
you.
novel, or if we should go on to something different.
There's not. Oh
It's
my
impossible.
goodness! She writes in such long run-on sentences,
Well,
which
it's
are
a cool book, though.
It's
but
patently difficult to
it
pronounce.
is very weird, hard to read out loud. Yes.
She sells seashells on the seashore. Tell your friends. All right, chapter 32,
Last
which is
but
the
not
last
least.
chapter in the book. Luckily for all concerned, the next day was a Saturday.
Saturn.
The great goddess, true tradition, had come upon the day sacred to her, Friday, so called after Freya, the northern Venus. There not being much doing at the office on a Saturday, I stopped at home and nursed my asthma, which had not been improved by my breathing of the sea fog in bulk. The day was sparkling and sunny after the fog, and the bay was full of little dancing waves, very blue. I thought as we strolled over the level of sands left bare by the tide, what a magnificent place it would be to raise kids, if we ever had any. And I did not like to voice my thoughts to Molly for fear of hurting her feelings. But I had a feeling, from the way she was looking out to sea, that she was thinking the same thing. I looked at Molly and she wasn't looking at me, and it struck to me odd that I should have known her all this time and never seen her in what I saw now, and wondered whether the change was in her or me. Perhaps a bit of both, if the truth be known. The priest of the moon had done his work well, and what he had taught was certainly putting Molly and me on our feet. It struck me that it would be a good many other folk on their feet too, if they knew what we knew. We climbed slowly, for I was rather breathless, up to the vine terraces, and sat there in the sun on the seat under the breast of the down, for sun does me more good than anything else when my asthma is bothering me. The little vines had long since shed their winter wrappings, and their funny little woolly buds had developed into pretty yellowish leaves on their long whipcorn stems. All the same, they looked to me melancholious little plants, but Molly had hopes of them, and she and the tweenie nursed them as if they were kids. We looked out over the hollow land of the marshes. It was barely above the level of the spring tides, and only the dikes prevented the sea flooding it when there was an onshore gale. But today there was no gale, only a soft breeze, and we watched the uncut hay rippling like water as it passed. The place was stiff with larks, and their songs came up to us as we sat under the breast of the cliff. I told Molly how I had seen as a boy the footings of the ancient quays, left behind by the receding sea.
The marshes had changed but little since those days. Oh, the marshes had changed but little since those days. There'd be a comment, right?
They should, but
Anyway.
whatever.
And the ancient life seemed all about us in the warm, breathing air and sparkling sun. I became very conscious of the continuity of life in the land, passing down from father to son in slow ways of husbandry that never changed at heart. Life goes on, the life of the race, and we are but parts of a larger whole. For the life of that race itself is a part of the life of Isis. And I thought of the days when men worshipped her as the giver of life to the race, and warden of its continuity, naming even their seaport after her, and wondered what things they had known that we had forgotten, to which Morgan had given the clues and left us the puzzle out.
Left us to puzzle out. In other words, left us to figure it out. Yeah, what a weird term of
There
phrase.
was a lot in the old pagan worship, I was convinced. You don't say. The vicar could and never had steered Molly and me through our difficulties in the way that the priest of the moon had done. I could picture his face if he had been consulted on that subject. He would have gone out through the roof of the confessional like a scalded cat. It was very pleasant up there under the shelter of the warm gray rock. The heat of the sun made the herbs smell, and it was like incense. Far below, the little waves broke whispering and silvery on the shingle, and the song of the lark rose through them. I took off my coat and rolled up my shirt sleeves, and the sun cooked me to a crisp, and I felt lazy and very amiable. Out across the marshes we could see the new road, with cars sliding backwards and forwards on it, beads on a string. Down below us was the thatched roof of our home, the blue smoke rising from the chimney, and the waft of the wind brought it up to us, and the smell of the bread baking. Set in the masonry beside the hearth, in the living room, was an old-fashioned bread oven, in which you lit the fire of peats, and the room...
And when it had burnt out.
Peats. And when it had burnt out, you raked it out and put in your loaves. Molly insisted on using it, and I say it baked a champion loaf.
I have to stop there. We had one of them at Old Hall.
We did.
We
yes.
did.
I didn't use it, though.
No.
In some odd way, we seemed very much part of life on the marsh because we burnt its peat and thatched with its reeds. As soon as I found myself among the water's cuts and willows, I felt home, long before I got to the farm. Bell Knoll and Bell Head were our two watchmen, keeping the land and sea ways that led to us. But we went down and had lunch in the garden the
Cypress.
That's how you spell
Cypress.
cypress?
Cupressus hedges.
Cupresses, not
I don't know what
cypress.
cupressus is.
No.
Cupressus is
Hedges that grew like Jonah's gourd in the sandy soil, being already big enough to break the breeze off the sea of the blows on even the hottest days across the neck of the land.
Oh my God, what a run.
We were glad of it. For all afternoon, the farm baked in the shimmering heat and danced on the levels, till towards the evening the shadow of the down fell across it and sun sunk into the sea.
I ran Molly out to the fort to watch the sunset, and it was very fine that night. The sea was one sheet of palest gold. Along the horizons lay low masses of purple cloud looking like a mountain range, and behind them was a rose-pink sky. As the sun sank, curious green beams of afterglow shot up from below the sea line, and the sea turned violet purple. I drove back as the dusk closed in, and as we came up over the crest of the down and all the levels lay spread out beneath us, we saw a wonderful second sunset like dawn in the eastern sky, reflected from the sun below the sea. Then down the steep way along the cliff in Bottom Geet, and so to our home. We built a small fire of Azrael, June though it was, for it was always cool out there on the coast as soon as the sun had set, and we sat over it and gossiped very happily, quite forgetting what fires of Azrael are for, till a curious sense of the gathering power in the room reminded us. I had thought we had enough excitement for one full moon, but apparently the gods thought otherwise. Nothing came of it, however, but perhaps that was because high tide would be an hour later that night, and Molly chased me off to bed, saying the gods could call us if they wanted us. And so we went to bed, Molly to our quarters.
To her quarters.
To her quarters.
They're still not sleeping together.
I know, it's weird. Molly to her quarters and I to mine. For no one in his senses wants to share his kennel with a bulldog, faithful and affectionate animal though it is.
That's lovely.
My nocturnal habits were too much even for Molly. I take it he snores like a buzzsaw.
Okay.
All right then. Well, whatever. Upstairs, the faint, sweet smell of the juniper, cedar and sandal was very noticeable. I even saw a faint haze of blue smoke drifting along the passage, and concluded that there must be some cracks in the old chimneys, and that Bindling had not done his work too well. My room was at the seaward end of the house, and as the moon got towards its setting, its light came streaming onto the bed. I would not have shut it out, though Molly thought it helped me make me sleep badly, and I lay and watched the moon pass slowly across the window, and thought of the other moonsets I had seen out at the fort, and the silver pathway that led to the gods of the sea, and my trip to Atlantis in the company of the priest of the moon, and what it had meant when I was told that my dedication was accepted, and what was going to come of it. And there, in my heart, I renewed the dedication, and somehow it seemed vague and ineffectual. And so I sat up in bed and raised my arms in the sign of the horns of the moon and renewed it again out loud. And the outward and visible sign felt as if it were effectual, though the unspoken one had not.
The smell of the aromatic smoke from the fire of Azrael was coming upstairs very strongly now, and I began to get worried and wondered whether the defective chimney was going to set the house on fire. But then I remember we had only left a handful of ash behind us when we had gone to bed, and there was something about the smoke that no terrestrial fire could account for. I began to wonder what was going to happen. I held out my hands to feel the air and see whether it was developing that slippery coldness that had come to the fort when Morgan worked her right. But on the contrary, it felt surprisingly warm for that hour of the night, and with a curious dry heat, like the hot room of a Turkish bath, and the temperature was rapidly rising. I began to wonder whether the house had gone on fire in good earnest, and what in the world was going to happen next, and whether I had better get up and see. Then the door opened soundlessly, and Molly entered. She had never come to my room of her own accord before, unless she had heard me moving about and knew I was seedy, and I wondered whether she had come to rouse me with the news that the house was on fire. But she did not speak, though she could see me sitting up in bed in the moonlight and knew that I was awake. She took up her stand at the front of my bed, with the window behind her and the moonlight streaming through it. Molly always wears a flowered voile nightie, which she makes herself, and very pretty they are too, but no use when the light is behind her. She looked just like an antique statue, a pocket of Venus, and she held out her arms towards me in a strange stiff attitude of the ancient gods, like Hathor when she is a hawk, and I saw that about her neck and wrist were Morgan's sapphires. She began to sing. She used Morgan's tune, but the song she sung was not one that Morgan had ever sung to me. I am the star that rises from the sea, the twilight sea. All tides are mine and answer unto me, tides of men's souls and dreams and destiny, Isis veiled and Ea bin Agi. Lo, I receive the gifts thou bringest me, life and more life in fullest ecstasy. I am the moon that dwelleth thee, draweth thee. I am the waiting earth that calleth thee. Come unto me, great Pan. God help us. Come unto me, great Pan, come unto me.
The low room faded under the magic of the singing, opening out into a vast and moonlit plain of black basalt, barren and volcanic, and I thought of the lost Atlantis after the cataclysm and the mountains of the moon. In the centre of the plain was a moon temple of open black columns, set in a circle like slender and graceful Stonehenge of Doric pillars. Silhouetted against it were the lovely lines of Molly, like a Tangra figurine in her shadowy shift, and I knew that she was exercising her ancient right and giving me the mating call in the name of the moon, far truer to nature than any convention of duty and modesty. And I knew why Morgan had said that on the inner planes the woman is positive and should take the initiative, for the astral plane is ruled by the moon, and woman is her priestess. And when she comes in her ancient right, representing the moon power is hers, and she can fertilize the male with vitalizing magnetic force. And the answering power awoke in me from the very deeps of my being, far deeper than the overflow of desire that comes from a physical pressure.
Ooh, ah, missus.
For she called me up from the reserves of vital force and brought them into action. The reserves that the law of our nature guards against, that great crises when we fight for life itself. The things that give the madman his strength and the poet his creative frenzy. Not until these things are called up by the call of the beloved can we said to have been mated to the depths of our being. They are not called forth when the man woos the woman because he feels like it, but they are called forth when she comes to him in the name of great Isis and bids him worship the goddess with her and through her. The dark plain with its pillared temple grew clearer and clearer, as if I saw it at the moonrise. The low ceilinged room of the farmhouse had disappeared, and overhead was a high clear sky. Molly remained, however, a silvery figure in the silver moonlight. Isis unveiled, come down from heaven to me, and she was made one with her. We had passed out into another dimension, the dimension of the things of the mind, and that which was between us had taken on a significance which was no longer personal, but part of life itself, of life, going on in the eternal becoming. Molly was to me not a woman, but the thing which is woman, and because I saw not her, but what was behind her, life came in with such a rush that we were whirled away like leaves in the wind. The barriers of personality went down, and we were made one with a cosmic life. Not with each other, for that I think can never be, and we miss the turning when we seek it, but one with a larger whole, and things which are equal to a third are equal to either. Losing ourselves in the larger life, we found each other.
It is a thing difficult to explain and a matter of experience. I have put it clearly as I can. We're very glad for that. I do not pretend to understand it. There is something beyond the comradeship to be found in a marriage, something that the personality of the beloved cannot give. It is the magnetic something that begins to flow when we reach out beyond the personality of woman towards her essential womanhood. It is, I think, this essence, this vital principle that creates form through function, which was the ancients personified as the great goddess Isis, veiled in the heaven and unveiled in love. And through all the ecstasy of the experience, like a muted orchestra accompanying great singing, went the sound of a voice as clear as a bell. I knew that the priest of the moon was presiding over the rite as they did in ancient Atlantis, when the virgins of the sun were brought into the great temple. It was an ordered rite, too, corresponding to the process in great nature herself. Learn now the mystery of the ebbing and flowing tides. Isis of nature awaiteth the coming of her Lord of the Sun. She calls him, she draws him from the place of the dead, the kingdom of Ameneti, where all things are forgotten, and he comes to her in his boat, called millions of years, and earth grows green and springing grain. For the desire of Osiris answers unto the call of Isis, and so it will ever be in the hearts of men, for thus the gods have formed. Whoso denieth this is abhorred of the gods. But in the heavens our Lady Isis is the moon, and the moon powers are hers. So is also the priestess of the silver stars that arises from the twilight sea. Hers are the magnetic moon tides ruling the hearts of men. In the inner she is all potent. She is the queen of the kingdom of sleep. All the invisible working are hers. And she rules all things ere they come unto birth. And as though Osiris her mate the earth grows green, so the mind of a man conceives through her power. The secret concerns the inner nature of the goddess, which is dynamic. As the sound of the voice went on, I seemed to find myself inside a circle of slender black pillars that formed a temple of the moon in the midst of the burnt-up barren plain in the moonlight. And the moonlight was concentrated, leaving all else in the darkness. And there was silence for a while, and I heard great tides of the skies come up and go by in their rhythm of musical colors. Each had its beat and its note and its periodicity. They were like the notes of an organ, and they were like a wheeling beam of light. One could conceive them as forces, one could personify them as angels, and see great forms go by on strong wings, singing as they went, and the glimpse of the half-seen faces.
We were alone now, were Molly and I, in the open temple in the empty plain. Only the moon above us and the whirling earth beneath us, but all sacraments end in silence. Even the priest of the moon withdrew and left us alone with the moon and the earth and space. And then we heard far off the sound of a rising tide, the soft silvery beat of light surf on shingle, and we knew that the waters were spreading over the earth at the end of the Eon. And the voice of the priest of the moon came again as the sea drew nearer. Consummatum est. Those who have received the touch of Isis have received the opening of the gates of inner life. For them the tides of the moon shall flow and ebb and flow, and never cease in their cosmic rhythm. Then the moon temple and the wide plain faded, and through the open window we heard the surf of an earthly tide upon the shingle as the moon passed to her setting. We were back in the low-ceilinged room of the farm, but still the voice of the priest of the moon went on. Great sun, moving in the heavenly houses, has left the house of the fishes for the house of the water-bearer.
Moving backwards.
In the coming age shall humanity be holy, and in the perfection of the human shall we find the humane. Take up the manhood into Godhead, and bring down the Godhead into manhood. And this shall be the day of God with us, for God is made manifest in nature, and nature is the self-expression of God.
Thus is the dawning of the age of Aquarius.
When the moon is in the 7th house and Jupiter aligns
Right, because it
with
says
Mars.
that we're moving from the fishes to the water bearer. Well, this was quite interesting.
Wasn't it? Well, there you go. And look, we couldn't do better on timing. That was it. We got the book in. Well.
Even though we started a few minutes late, but we're all good.
Well, boys and girls.
So what do you think? Do you think that this is about the sphere of Binah, or the pillar of severity, or do you think it's like nets?
Or even the pillar of severity and the sphere of Binah.
Well, they're on the same side of the tree.
I know what you mean.
But what do they say? The pillar of Binah?
Yeah, and the sphere of severity.
Oh, sorry. And there is a sphere that is the temple of the moon. So I don't know. It's all quite interesting. And I found it interesting that we have a priest of the moon as well. So that's
and the woman should play the active role in this. It's quite interesting.
Well, she's a goddess. I am the goddess. I am the mother.
I thoroughly enjoyed your reading of this.
Well, I'm glad you did. I felt like we stumbled over a lot of these crazy words.
I will tell you, boys and girls, try reading this book aloud.
D-R-A-U...
Draft.
D-H-T?
That's draft. That's how we spell draft. Overdraft is that with an over in front of it.
Right.
Yeah, I know. I had one of those once. Anyway, moving on.
All right, my lovelies. We shall put all of this together in one big long video at some point.
We will.
And we'll figure out what book we're going to read next. So I don't know if we will do the next novel or not, because this was interesting. I don't know.
So
what
knows?
do you vote?
What do you vote? Put your answers. Jot your answers.
Like the goat-footed god?
Maybe.
Or,
jot your suggestions down on a $20 note and mail it to
the Sea Priestess.
No, seriously. If you guys would really like a particular book, maybe, then make the comment. Make it a suggestion in the comments. You can do this at any time. You obviously can't put it in the chat.
It is full of old terms. Yes, it is.
It is actually.
Why couldn't they put it in the chat?
No. You can't put it in the chat because the chat only works when we're live. Oh, so you're obviously not going to be live because we're only live right now, and when we're watching this, we will still be alive. Well, hopefully, if all goes according to plan.
Just ignore him and tell us your suggestions on Magical Monday or something.
Or stick it in the comments is what I'm trying to say.
Saying, yeah.
Stick it in the comments.
I'd like to continue
with her book.
Well, okay. You're a glutton for punishment, Carol, but okay.
You just want us to see us fall over our tongues, don't you? Ginger. What?
Well, I remember
a sentence about this long.
I think it was Moon Magic. I read part of that before. Yeah. And Aleister Crowley makes an appearance in there.
Oh, does he?
But she doesn't name him.
I don't think she likes
She
Aleister,
doesn't name him as Uncle Al. She just talks about this fiendish magician who does his thing.
I don't know. I think Violet Frith
was a troubled soul.
In the words of, for those of you who've seen The League of Gentlemen and the psychiatrist who's there, were there any sexual issues? Say no more. Say no more.
All right.
That's all I'm saying. No, you two did good. You think? Well, thank you. Thank you for your kind words, Carol. We very much appreciate it. All right, guys, we need to get something to eat. I'm starving. Today has been just packed, but by golly, has it been a good day.
Knocked a lot off the list today.
Oh my goodness, we've done superbly well today. We're loving it. So thank you so much.
See you soon.
Yep.
Thank you all. Like, comment, and subscribe.
Yes, and hit that notification bell. And yes, just do your thing. Tell people about us. We want to be less of a well-kept secret.
Bye.
Thanks.
Good night.
Bye, guys. We'll see you next time. Have a great night.